As you know, we were in Cincinnati earlier this week. We had a chance to talk about the issues that are important to the voters of the state of Ohio. We spoke at that time with Senator Mike DeWine, who's running for re-election. His challenger, the Democratic Congressman Sherrod Brown, we weren't able to get our schedules together until today. So we're pleased to have Congressman Brown join us today from Cleveland. Good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Yeah, if I had a copy of the Cincinnati Enquirer with me, it would show that local polls say that for voters in Ohio, the big issue is the economy. Today, though, the New York Times says a national poll says it's the war in Iraq. In your view, what will decide your elections there in Ohio?
Well, I think what decides the election is if you want to stay the course in Iraq, if you want to continue the Bush and Taft administration policies on education and health care and jobs, then you vote for the incumbent. But I think people want a senator who will stand up for the middle class, a senator who will work hard on economic development, a senator who will go take the country, take the state in a very different direction from what we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years.
In the last 5 or 6 years, the state of Ohio has lost roughly 200,000 jobs, mainly in manufacturing. If you were elected, how would you turn that around? How would you grow jobs in your state?
Well, first of all, we've got to get our fiscal house in order in this country. 6 years ago, we had budget surpluses as far as the eye could see, $5.6 trillion 10-year budget surpluses. Today, we have $1 billion a day budget deficit. And I don't think we can grow this economy. You just had a couple of people on talking about potential recession, in large part because we have a trade deficit of almost exceeding $800 billion a year this year for 2006 once the year finishes. We have a budget deficit approaching, well, upwards of $300 billion, not counting the Iraq War. And until we can rein both of those in, I don't know how we have sustained economic development in Ohio or nationally.
Along those lines, the prevailing wisdom seems to be that if the Democrats are to take control of either the House and or the Senate, they will raise taxes. That's the word from the Republicans. But we've asked Congressman Rangel, who presumably would take over Ways and Means if that were the case, and he didn't deny it. Will the Democrats raise taxes if they take control?
I think the fundamental issue in this campaign, in part, is that on taxes, that the Republicans and Mike DeWine have always looked to give tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, and Democrats want to see tax relief in terms of affordable college student loans. I mean, helping middle-class students with tuition tax credits, elder care, all the kinds of middle-class tax credits and tax incentives we can do, because the engine of our economy is driven by the middle class, not trickle down, not by the wealthiest people, and that's really a fundamental difference between the parties. So no, I don't think Democrats raise taxes. I think our focus is on the middle class, and that's the difference between us and them.
But how do you, if you want to do something about the deficit you're talking about, obviously then you have to cut spending if you're not going to raise taxes.
Well, we're spending, as you know, we're spending $2 billion a week on a war in Iraq with no end in sight.
Where would you cut then?
Well, then you begin to, you start with the redeployment of troops out of Iraq in the next year, and after 2 years, you look at the profligate spending of this crowd in Washington that talks a good game, but regularly pays off its biggest contributors with earmarks. That's why congressmen are going to jail these days, because they're paying off their big contributors with earmarks. And just like in Ohio, there's a corruption tax. Workers' comp really leans hard, really weighs heavily on small business. Workers' compensation does, because of the theft and because of the partial privatization and all that the Taft administration and the DeWine people have done that hurt small business in my state.
Let's be clear on this then. You seem to suggest, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but let me ask you to be clear on this. Would the Democratic agenda then be to put a timetable on withdrawal of troops out of Iraq?
No, I can't speak for other Democrats. I can speak for myself, and I voted against the Iraq War. The incumbent, Mike DeWine, sitting on the Intelligence Committee, didn't ask the tough questions and voted for the Iraq War. That's over and done with. I want to see us redeploy our troops. I want to see the military, after we push the Iraqis to come up with, to build their security, military and police security forces, and push them for political compromise among the Sunni, Shiites, and Kurds, then we instruct our generals to begin to give us a timetable to redeploy our troops out of Iraq within the next 1.5 to 2 years.
Congressman Brown, I'm glad you could make it today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
Sherrod Brown, Congressman from Ohio, running for Senate against Mike DeWine, who we spoke to on Tuesday.
On Tuesday, yes.